So I just shot a 1 minute version of this idea, and now I'm going to sort of expand on it, like start again from the top and kind of walk you through it in a little more detail. So this is like just the crash course of how to do just basic, decent sound for a typical sound system, just whatever the case may be, whether it's faders, whether it's dials, whether it's an all-in-one acoustic amp, whether it's like an 8-channel box on top of a speaker with maybe some monitors, or whether it's like a real board with with faders and gains and pots and sends. Whatever the case may be, this is sort of a strategic approach. If you're not familiar with sound, like what are you trying to do? And the main guiding principle that we're going to have here is moderation is pretty decent. Everything in moderation probably gets the job done. So let's talk about what we're about to see, and then let's take a look at it. So whatever kind of board it is, it's going to have many of the same components that you're going to be interested in. You need to know where the inputs are for your microphone and for your microphones and for your instrument cables. You need to know where those individual inputs are going to have individual volume somewhere. There's going to be a master volume, which is like the overall projection to the room, obviously. And then you're going to have somewhere a means of assigning effects, reverb in other words, and then somewhere you're going to have some means of EQ. In fact, you may have two. You may have like a parametric little faders that create the sort of swoop and curve of the room EQ, which you probably want to leave alone or not start there, but instead you want to start on, there's probably some kind of like a high, mid, low, or perhaps a high and then a sweep, what's called a sweepable mid. In other words, you set a frequency and then add or subtract some of that specific frequency in the mids, and then a low band dial that you're going to, similar to how like a lot of old stereos worked, or hopefully you're familiar with like how a guitar amp works. If you have any kind of touchstone, it's the same idea, but we're going to start with those. And the idea again is that, hey, if you don't know what you're really looking for, try everything in the middle, everything in moderation. So we're going to bring the volumes down and then bring them up to taste. We're going to set EQs in the middle, and then if we really hear something we want to tweak, we're going to tweak it a little bit to taste, and then we're going to try to find and apply some moderate amount of a moderate kind of a very tasteful reverb if we can find one on the board. So we're going to avoid things like delay. We're going to avoid things like phaser, or the sort of crazy effects that may be at the tail end of a selectable effect, and just look for something like a plate or a room reverb and just put a little bit of it on there and just bring it in, and hopefully that's going to give us some decent sound. So let's take a look at the board and see what I'm talking about, and then let's do that, and then I'm going to show you one trick that might actually make it a little bit sweeter. So let's look at the board and go from there. Okay, so all these boards, whatever the format of your PA may be, they all have the same components, just in different places. So let's just talk about what we're looking for. Again, we've got like a master volume that controls the overall volume in the room. We've got some way to assign some kind of effect, and then we've got some EQs, which are probably going to be set in some crazy position that someone else dialed in, and then you've got the individual volumes for your individual inputs. In this case, it's guitar and voice. So what I want to do here is zero the board for myself and set everything kind of into a moderate position. So we are going to have whatever our master volume is. You could bring this down, then bring it up. I happen to know this is going to work out as a pretty reasonable volume, but let's just say that we just brought this down a little bit, and then we're going to take our individual instrument and vocal input volumes and bring them to 0, and then once we actually get up there, we'll do a quick sound check where we find
what the blended best mix that we can get is. As far as EQ is concerned, and if you can't read this, this is low, mid, the assignment of the frequency for mid, and high. So it's what's called a sweepable band EQ. So we're going to bring everything, our lows to 12 o'clock, our mid to 12 o'clock, like right in the middle. We'll just pick the frequency that's right in the middle, and we'll bring these highs right in the middle. So, and then right now we've got dry, no effects. In this case, I would just do up and down. Okay, well, what we want to look for is just either a plate or room reverb, something not crazy. I'll just pick a medium room reverb. If we have the option to like dial in the amount of reverb, we want to just give a moderate splash, like 30% or something like that. If it's on a dial, do something like, okay, maybe 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, something like that, but not going crazy. Anyway, let's see what this sounds like once we bring in the instruments. Okay, so let's see what it sounds like to just have that flat board that we just looked at. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple little tricks as I step up here. As I put on this guitar, if you don't know this trick already for how to plug a guitar in. So first off, this cable, I'm going to loop it up, under my strap, around, and into the plug. This prevents me from stepping on the cable and pulling it out. It's just sort of an old trick that a lot of people do. And then I've plugged in my guitar, and then I'll plug it into the board. Same with this microphone. This microphone's dead, but I'm going to plug it in. So here I am plugging my guitar into the board, and the microphone into the board. And then we have those volumes at 0, and we're going to start bringing them up.
Hey, Zimbabwe. Say
Okay, so what I just did there is I had the master volume at sort of a moderate level, brought my guitar up where I had the strings ringing, and then brought it up to where it's like, okay, that sounds like I'm in the ballpark. And then while balancing with my guitar, I brought the mic up to a certain level, checked it against the guitar, felt like I needed a little more, checked it again. Now I'm in the ballpark on everything.
Now I'd say that perhaps, and this is in part because I'm using a typical SM58 kind of mic as opposed to the mic I normally would use, which I prefer as a little bit nicer microphone, but this is just meant to emulate the typical setup. SM58s are a little bit on the weak side, so I'm going to give it a little bit greater boost, and now I'm really kind of where I want to be. So this is what it sounds like in the room, kind of how we had it dry, or with a little bit of reverb. You can hear it. And now here we go. Hey, it's time to gather round, time to hear the tale of a sad, lonely boy, dreamed of love. Tale begun in secret, but going down. Someday we must find her sad heart on a copper wire through endless rain. Hey, hey, these are things that damn sons do, but he lit the hidden fires, burned himself in war. No one.
Okay, so that was decent, and I want to talk about one little trick that you can do, which it's a good gamble. That's decent enough with all the EQs on set to the middle, but I'll bet you that it's going to be just a little more exciting if you make the following handful of adjustments. First off, everybody probably wants a little more high, just a nudge. Just a little more excitement from the sort of attack and the zing and the zest. Probably the guitar and the voice both want a little more of that. Then, one of the things you need to know about EQ is that it's not just about adding more, but it's about taking a little bit away to remove competition. By this I mean the guitar and the voice are operating in a lot of the same frequencies, especially when it comes to the mids. What I'm going to do here is, this bottom row is my guitar. I'm going to cut just a little bit of the mids from the guitar to let the vocal have a little boost and have that shine through it and be sort of the strong, putting the vocal in the spotlight, the warmth, and the star of the show kind of aspect. Similarly, I'm going to know that my voice is not really going to be needing a whole lot of low end or operating there, and that my guitar can probably go ahead and have just a little bit more of that and enjoy, being that foundation. So let's see what these little adjustments and these adjustments alone do to the side-by-side of the example I just played, and I think you'll agree that it's a little bit of an improvement, and it's something you can have in your back pocket as sort of a standard adjustment you might try if you're feeling like you could do just a little bit better than everything at 12 o'clock.
Hey, it's time to gather round, time to hear the tale of a sad and lonely boy who dreamed of love. The tale begun in secret long ago, but damsel knew him well, spun her sad heart on a copper wire through endless rain. Hey, it's time to gather round, time to hear the tale of a sad, lonely boy dreamed of love. The tale begun in secret long ago, but damsel knew him well, spun her sad heart on a copper wire through endless rain. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. So again, just follow these guidelines and you'll probably get a decent sound, even if you haven't kind of figured out your own way to go further. And then take that concept, that idea of like using EQ not just to add, but also to cut little holes in competing instruments, and remembering that guitar and voice compete with each other, and so you want to let them have their own room to breathe, and that most voices don't need quite so much low end, and the guitar sounds kind of nice to fill that in, whereas the voice really wants to take command and be heard and be the star of the show in the sort of mids, and the guitar can maybe step a little back there, but that everybody could use just a little more brightness, a little more clarity in terms of the high end, the attack, the zing, the excitement of each instrument, of the voice and of the guitar. So in general, just little nudges here and there in those three areas will often make your mix sound a little more exciting without any other analysis, like blind. Go in and make that adjustment. You're probably going to be happy with how that sounds over everything at 12 o'clock. All right, hope that was helpful. And somebody's attacking my house. My dog tells me, so I've got to go right now. Till next time, see you.